A10. It's now chapter 13 of Ender's Game, and today is May 27th. 20. It's one of these days. One of these days. It's last week of deadline 4. I do know that. So there you go. So 25, 26. Today's the 26th. There you go. All right. Figure out the calendar. Always check your calendar. All right, so we're on chapter 13 for Ender's Game, and it's entitled Valentine. So the International Fleet, the Hegemon, the Polymarch, they all have figured out who Locke and Demosthenes really are. At first, they thought they were countries pitting each other against themselves, and the Russians were on one side, and then there was. Well, the main concern was the Russians, anyways, that they were supporting Demosthenes, and but the American side was more for Locke. So they finally figure out who these aliases belong to, and of course, when you read the narration at the beginning of chapter 13, it's quite long. They figure out it's the Wiggin family, of course. So we've already talked about how important the Wiggin family is to the planet Earth, to International Fleet, to every human that's out there. And we have a little bit of Peter, a little bit of Valentine, and of course that creates Ender, and Ender is the presumed savior of the planet. But Valentine and Peter are doing their little bit as well, and to either, well, basically to manipulate the thinking on the surface of the planet surface, the governments and stuff like that, and they're having fun doing it. They're having fun having these dialogues, these conversations, and of course these government officials are. It's Locke versus Demosthenes, and now Valentine is actually enjoying playing the role because there's a rush to it. It's like a high that they're both having, albeit Peter he's getting his high out of it because his power, he has control and things like that. Valentine's has it because she's being heard, and they're accepting her viewpoints and so on and so forth. So the International Fleet is hoping that they can persuade Demosthenes, aka Valentine, to side with them, and but then the IF, the International Fleet, will not respond to the Russians versus the Americans and so on and so forth. They're going to keep quiet on the fact that they do know who these individuals are, and they're just going to let things play out. But behind the scenes, they're hoping they can maybe use Demosthenes, because it's only Demosthenes can get Ender back in the game. He has returned to Earth, and he's given up. And as recall last chapter, there's no one else to play. He's won every game and that they've given him, or every game that he's played, for that matter. So now he's got nothing else to even strive for. So he's returned to Earth, and Valentine is called to meet with Ender again by Graf. And now the last time Valentine met with Graf to speak to Ender, she wrote the letter that was taken out of context, and it really hurt Ender's feelings and his opinion of Valentine. And in response to that redacted letter, and redacted is when you cross out certain parts of the letter, and if you read it in that fashion, you only get part of the story. She responds using her alias that the title of third is an honorable title, and it's better than any other human being on the planet. So whether Ender appreciated that or not, you'll have to decide that for yourself based on the evolution of the character. And so Ender's been on the planet for actually 2 months. He's been on the planet for 2 months. And so Valentine meets with her brother for the first time in quite a while. Now remember, he started the novel at age 6. He's now 10, so those 4 years have passed, and he's been training and training. Now he's been actually promoted to command school, and but he's not willing to go there. So the purpose of Valentine's visit is to get him back in the game, and so they can finally get the Ender in the command seat or chair and finally win this war. So Ender sees Valentine as a stranger now, not as a sister, but as a stranger. He knows there should be some feelings, like that he should love his sister, that certain remembrances of his sister, the supporting factor that, or the person that she was before he left for battle school, but he can't articulate it. He doesn't even, he finds it hard to even define what those words mean, because he's been so wired to think a different way, and that was to defeat all his enemies and win the game at all costs. So they have a conversation, and the conversation always turns back to Peter, that Ender is fearing that he's becoming more like Peter. Valentine even brought it up, but Ender did not want to talk about it, but for some reason always keeps coming back to Peter, what he's doing on as Locke, and some of the things that Ender has done is just like what Peter would do as well. So there is a part here that Ender feels that he can't win this big game, and he's going to be that Mazer Rackham, that one person that's going to be looked upon to save the day, and he won't be able to win the game, or that's what he fears anyways. And Valentine's trying to reassure him and actually stress the fact that if you don't try, then you failed. Okay, but if you try and lose, at least you tried. Okay, and that's something that we all need to live by. You need to try things, and yes, you'll succeed in some, you'll fail at the others, but at least you tried. You can say that you tried, and that's what Valentine's saying. But if you don't try and they lose, well, then it's his fault. And he says, Valentine says, if you can't beat them, then they deserve to win because they're stronger and better than us. And it's not going to be your fault, but you tried. And then she says, if you try and lose, it isn't your fault. But if you don't try and we lose, then it's all your fault. You've killed us all. And so then Ender goes to says he's a killer no matter what anyways. And is there truth to that? Well, he's vowed that he's going to defeat all his enemies. So on one hand, he is a killer, and that's going to define what kind of character is going to finish this novel. And so I've said it before, will the real Ender stand up? Okay, so we'll find out which Ender is going to stand up at the end of the novel. Ender heads back to, or goes back with Graf, I should say, and Graf informs them that they're heading to Eros, and that's where command school, and that's where the final battle's going to be planned and prepared, and they're going to take off from there because it's the closest planet to the Bugger world. And so then he gets back into studying, and he finds out that the buggers can communicate using their minds, and that they communicate from ship to ship. So they talk to each other, and that's how they're able to defeat their enemies. And so Ender has to figure out a way to do the same, so that he can use their strengths against them. So, and if you recall, when he was with Bonzo, he was watching everybody, strengths and weaknesses and all that, and then he was able to manipulate. And we talked about manipulation quite often in this novel. Okay, so we're looking at, he wants to know when the buggers are going to come, and there's a prediction of 5 years. Everything's ready to go. We just need to get ready for this upcoming battle. And what else do you need to know here I can touch on here? Oh, yes. So they finish off the chapter. Nature can't, this is important. Sorry, I'm going to back up here. This is Graph. Ender, believe me, there is a century of discussion on this very subject. Nobody knows the answer, whether they have intelligent life. When it comes down to it, though, the real decision is inevitable. If one of us has to be destroyed, then let's make damn sure that we're the ones alive at the end. Our genes won't let us decide any other way. Nature can't evolve a species that hasn't a will to survive. Individuals might be bred to sacrifice themselves, but the race as a whole can never decide to cease to exist. So, if we can, we'll kill every last one of the buggers, and if they can, they'll kill every last one of us. Ender says, as for me, I'm in favor of surviving. Graf says, I know, that's why you're here. So that's chapter 13 recap, and stay tuned for the summaries. Take care and be safe.